once again. Welcome to the Perceptional, elevating all your senses, expanding your curiosity. So plug in now as we welcome your host, Dr. James Denito.
Welcome back, my friends, to another episode of The Perceptional. We are going to do a kind of a follow-up to a show I did about a year and a half ago. It was on climate change and common sense. Today we're going to be talking about with a guest co-host, Rob Mattson, and we'll get more of his background here in a moment. We're going to be talking more of what actually is happening to our climate that you should be scared of, very fearful. Or maybe you shouldn't be. Maybe you should feel empowered, and maybe you won't be. But we have some really great ideas that we're going to throw at you today about climate. But first, let's introduce our co-host today. So, Rob, why don't you tell us something about what you have done to lead up to this point where you're in my room here sharing all your knowledge, because you have some amazing insights as to what life is all about. So let's start with what you've been doing lately, which I understand is a lot of walking.
Yes. So thank you. Excited to have the conversation. I go back to and start about 2014. I started and strapped on a Fitbit in an effort as a newly divorced man in trying to get better health, get better or back to caring about myself. And that sort of led into a walking journey that through getting married and listening to a lot of audible books as I was going, was introduced to a gentleman named David Goggins. He wrote, basically paraphrase, a book that tells us that we're capable of way more than we give ourselves credit for, which caused me to create this ultimate goal to walk the circumference of the earth. And I wanted to do it by the time I turned the age of 50. That made the goal really about a 12-mile-a-day walk, and I finished 28 days early, March 14th, Pi, 3/14, 2022. Today, I'm roughly 33,400 miles into the journey, and I'm in what's called lap 2. So, been doing a lot of walking.
It's 250,000 miles to the moon. Is that the ultimate goal, to say, heck with this going around the earth a few times, I've walked to the moon?
You know, I've heard guys that talk about finding a Muskogee, which is sort of an adventure. I've looked at and took the opportunity to buy waterproof earbuds, and I was going to swim the circumference of the earth. I looked at other alternatives, and I found that I was like that Snickers commercial where my wife would look at me and say, "You need to go for a walk." Like, I built in that into my identity, where I use it to, for those that are much younger than us, probably don't remember, but you used to have to defrag your hard drive. You used to have to help your computer to take all the different things that was going on throughout the day and pull it back together and put it into an organized format. And I find that my walking allows me to defrag my hard drive on a daily basis and take myself through whatever it is that I need. Is it I'm working on I sell for a living. I'm an account executive. So is it working through a deal? Is it one of the biggest joys and benefits that have come through this journey is learning the word perspective. So perspective, you can have 3 or 4 different people look at the same scene and give you 3 or 4 different examples of what's going on. And so I take the time in my walking to really think through, why is it that why is she doing this, where I'm trying to figure out how to put it together. And so walking gives me a chance to sort of pull that together, as well as personal relationships. You know, why did she get mad because I watered the dog that way? You know, that kind of thing.
So why are we seeing more climate changes that make the news? The news tells us that we have these billion-dollar catastrophes. There's 5 times as many, I think was the number I saw, as what we had a few decades ago in terms of the United States alone.
Right.
We don't care about the rest of the world, all the drowning and things they have. It's just all about us.
Right.
But we have our poor insurance industry that has been raising all of our rates crazily high to make up for climate change. Basically, it's, again, what do you expect, you people? You keep eating this wrong food and you keep living this certain lifestyle. So do you think we're seeing more weather changes, or do you think the media is just making us more aware of them? Because if they say, look, it's costing us more money, we don't disagree. The insurance industry has numbers. They're
Right.
actuaries. But is it because we're moved to areas that we shouldn't be living? Is it because of the cost of living? Everything is this expensive? Do you really think we're seeing more climate disasters or things like that? Or what's your opinion on?
I polled people when we talked about what we're going to talk about, and I did some research. I used the web search that starts with a G, and did some background. Are we seeing more? The graphs that I all could look at looked up and to the right. Were they all adjusted for the cost and things of that nature? That was one of my economics friends, shout out to Pat, that he said is, hey, I'd like to see the data. I'd really like to understand the data. And as much as the data I could look at, it does feel like we've had more intense storms. I would go back and say we're a fear-driven economy, so it sells news, and I think you're right. There is more over-reporting of those kind of things. I also think there's one of the words that I'd use is arrogance, that people continue to go back and build and put pieces of property in places that shouldn't have a piece of property. And it's beautiful, and they've had this insurance company system that has been there to, for monopoly players, the get out of jail free card. And I think one of the guys I was talking to is like, these storms right now appear to be flipping all of their calculations over, and they're canceling policies and not allowing people to bring up new policies. So when corporations stop trying to make money off something, is it because we've gone too far? I think there's been change, and I do think we've put ourselves in places that aren't good for us to be. But I think as we were prepping, I think we're in a warming period. I do believe in the climate changing, but I think it's a cycle. And I think that along with that cycle could be increased activity in the atmosphere, which could lead to these mega storms that we're dealing with. So I'm giving that as an opportunity, as an option, but I don't know that I'm sold on it. How do you, do you have an opinion on it as well?
I'm just thinking of this rhinoceros they just dug up in the Siberian tundra there. And it was a hairy one, a mammoth rhinoceros. Never think about a rhinoceros having hair on it. But the thing that amazed me is the usual thing they find. It still had a mouthful of food in it when it was frozen solid. And we see a few critters that way. And you got to think how fast an ice age may come on versus how fast or slow a warming period comes on. And we did a movie about this, and I forgot the name of it, but it showed when that vortex from space came in, you couldn't outrun the cold wave and it froze you solid. But we're seeing evidence that may have happened like that.
Right.
And because of how scary climate change can be, my observation is that because these things are getting more extreme, there's more and more dependency of people on the government to save their asses. And they're all sitting around waiting for the helicopter and the boats and everything else when you can say these people, but you knew there was a risk living here. You're on a mountain. Could it be possible there's a landslide or a tsunami because you're on an earthquake zone, and on it goes. And the government is basically saying, don't worry, we've got FEMA, we've got these agencies that will save your butt. And then they're doing a terrible job at it.
Right.
And do we do something with FEMA and make it better, or make it go away and let this come back to the private industry if you had to go there? Because it's a form of government insurance.
Sure.
We'll bail you out. We'll rebuild your house even. Maybe you'll get a tent instead, but...
We're getting ready to have some sort of an efficiency of government study, so we'll see where this goes. But I believe there are certain places where privatization, economics, having to have a balanced, some sort of a balanced budget, run a company, without just complete. I think that you could see some change there.
I also got thinking about the FEMA camps because I love conspiracies. And people thought that they were going to round up all of us dissidents and put them in camps. I don't know how they were going to put a couple 100 million people in camps, because that would be how many of us there would be. But I couldn't help but notice on some of these FEMA camps, because there wasn't many, that there was barbed wire around them. But barbed wire was designed to keep you from getting into the camp, not from getting out, based on the way the wire shapes on there. So then you start thinking, well, maybe there's something else that I might want to get into that FEMA camp, and I start thinking, is there a tunnel access to the underground safety places? Open your mind up, when you start thinking that FEMA is going to be from the government, we're here to help. It maybe they're not really meant to handle these little disasters, but the day the earth stands still is when you really want FEMA to be there for you, and it's more than just having your local contractors come in and put a new roof back on your house when the tornado blew the thing off of there. Sometimes I like to be metaphysical, philosophical, and if weather is doing something that we consider extreme, is it nature's way of creating its own balance? We call that yin and yang. Yep. Where they're never really balanced, though. If you really understand that philosophy, is one is trying to become the other in their dynamic system. There's a ratio that those two are in. They're never really equal. Maybe the golden ratio from what we're learning about the mathematics of it. And I don't know how long these weather cycles go when it comes to the big picture. And so ice age and no ice, that could be a yin and yang cycle of the planet. Or within the little machinations of day-to-day stuff, flood and a drought, if the earth is going through something of its own, yin and yang, is it something that you think we could possibly have influence over, or are we just hanging on for the ride like little fleas on the back of a dog here?
I think that we're in control of our choices. I think the physical choices that I would say we have in this instance are locational, like where we happen to put populations, not building infrastructures in certain places that would make sense to have less population there. Not putting people in places that they don't belong. They talk about gases and other things that we have an effect on, and I think the cow thing. I thought the numbers, and I'm just going to pull numbers out. I'm not sure I've checked all of them, but there's 60 million cows in the U.S., but there's like 350 million cows in India. So if we were to do something because the cows were affecting us, are we really back to we don't have control of everything that happens in the world? So are we able to? Long-winded way of saying I don't know if we have a lot of choice in it. I think we have choice in everything we do and how we perceive or react or deal with these situations. And so if we do find, hey, it's in this cycle and it's going to continue, banding together, not doing the same thing, expecting different results, that kind of thing would be the area that I think I would lean into.
Because you've traveled and walked so much of the earth, how many different countries have you been to in your life so far?
I think I've never actually counted them up. I'm guessing close to 10, maybe 12. So, as a kid, U.S., Mexico, Canada, lived in Alaska for 9 years, so went through Canada quite a bit. Hawaii, not a different country, but another state, and we spent a lot of time there when I was in Alaska for defrosting, I think. But then I was in the military. I was in the Navy, so Singapore, Hong Kong, Jabal Ali, or what now is Dubai. That where you see these big giant cities, and it was just a piece of dirt at the time. And then I've traveled to India in my current sort of not current employer, but in current line of work. I've been to India supporting customers, and that's took me through London, England kind of thing, but mostly airports and things like that. So I think about 10 or 12 countries.
But you didn't just see those, especially you interacted with them a lot, right? And especially you walked these places.
Yeah, I've stepped over human feces in India on a sidewalk, as an example. I don't know if
It's not
that's
hard to do, people in that country.
I don't know if we're trying.
If we say how you've interacted with nature, though, in a lot of these places, does
Yes.
nature seem to be out of balance in a lot of the places you were at, or does it seem to be in control?
Well, so what I left out is my most favorite place in the world is St. Bart's, French West Indies. It takes 8 hours to get there from here, and it's really hard. But it's an 8 square mile island. When I go there, I believe in grounding, so to be the skin to the earth and be with the earth. And I can be there for 2 weeks, and the world is all right. Like, there isn't this chaos that we bring back. I can use my phone and connect with kids, and I can be a part of that if I want, but it's not there. And then I've also been in St. Bart's, where our host has helped us to screw the metal sheetings over the windows and all of the things, and looked and said, hey, we're getting ready for this hurricane to come through. And the hurricane comes through, and she looked at me as, we were unbolting and pulling it apart, and she's like, I really thought we were okay. I could feel it. And I said, I could feel it too. And she's like, I know that about you. I can feel that you and I are connected, like that part back where you were talking about that symbionts or human connection. So I'm giving a lot of answers there, but I've seen examples there of the best and being able to ignore all the chaos that we live in. And I've been there when Mother Nature has decided that they're going to clean up the ocean and clean the island. And
Do you think the people in St. Bart's are good stewards of the land there? Do they kind of like the American Indian have a certain respect to it? I know it's hard to separate them because they work with the resorts, and the resorts seem to be the ones that are abusive to the nature there. But
if we're going to focus strictly down to there's very few resorts, all single, level structures. There is no big, call it Hilton. I'm a Hilton guy, Hilton member forever. No Hilton properties there. There's nothing of size or shape. A lot of Airbnbs coming up, things of that nature. And then there's a ton of let's get back to, conspiracy theory. The Rockefellers have a place or had a place there. I can't remember the first guy. Something in Peggy. We'll look it up. But they had a place there built. We've been to the property. We've walked through it. And when they built their property, I want to say like a third of the island is cut off and is you can't build anything. And it's like in whatever they call them covenants that it's going to be there natural. So not a lot of opportunity for growth, and more people want to go there. So really what you're seeing is just an increase in expense to go get that nature. But
I tell people all the time I hate nature. I love the earth with what it looks like in a kind of an unanimated way, like waterfalls and beautiful mountains. But when you get down to what's living in it, excluding us, everything is there. Trillions of species all going about their business, all of which makes it very hostile to us here. I did a lecture at South Fork Ranch many years ago, I think it was 2008, called Being Human on an Inhuman Planet. And it was more about what we do to ourselves as well, about inhumanity, but certainly what the planet has to do with us. And there was a lot of what is, this is just what it is, and how we adapt to those things. I had some deep thoughts back then. I certainly got a lot more today. But one of the things about the dominant species of life on this planet is the microbes. They own this place, and they make our lives the most miserable. All day long, I'm trying to take away people's pain because of the microbes that's in them. I just went through a hellacious food poisoning the other day, just 48 hours ago. We won't get into the details, but it was microbes. My friends. And so I purged them all from my body, and they got into every nook and cranny. But did they care what they did to me? No. They were just having fun, living on some food I ate, and never know what it was. They sneak in there. But there's some interesting theories that microbes might be affecting our weather. We have seen microbes, germs, high up in these upper levels of the atmosphere. Somehow they survive up there. We think microbes won't live in space, but we're probably wrong about that too. They can live at the deepest crevices of the ocean, the incredible pressures and things like that. But they live in our atmosphere, and their presence changes light filtration. They even create precipitation mechanisms. So I can also just get kind of really dark about this, because if microbes are making our lives miserable, they might be responsible for making these severe weather changes. They're just mocking us, laughing down at us, because collectively microbes have a form of collective consciousness, and there's an ability for them to start anticipating things, act in a survival mechanism beyond the singular, the hive.
This is nature.
Like
nature fighting back. That's what you're saying. You're asking me, is nature fighting back?
And if they're trying to kill us all off by giving people food poisoning and arthritis and everything else, they may have found a better strategy: is just freeze us off the place, drown us, whatever it is.
We need sunlight.
So, and then they would still be here, right? The humans would all be dead, but we always say that when humanity is scrubbed from the earth, there'll be cockroaches and rats, and that'd be about it. But no, the microbes will still be here.
Yep.
I fantasize about a planet somewhere where there's no such thing as a microbe. We would never be allowed to go there, because how do you get there? We can never be sterile. You'd have to be created from scratch there.
But we're not sterile people. Like I'm the microbes that we have that we require to stay healthy, to stay alive.
They tell you need them, but what if you didn't have to have them? 15
years ago,
right?
You started to tell me to take probiotics. So I've been, I believe in the prebiotics, the probiotics, the microbes. I've even listened to a recent podcast. I'll shout out to DOAC. He had a gal on that is in the microbe of your mouth perspective, and how the bacteria and the bio that's happening, and you can mouthwash kills all the bacteria, so you're killing the good stuff and not the bad. I mean, so that level of species is going to be there. I believe we are all interconnected, like we are connected. So I would get back to what I started to interrupt with, and I think nature sometimes could be fighting back. Like it could be saying, hey, no more, don't build here. Hey, we've had enough. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility.
It could be that the role of microbes is necessary only because they own this place and we have to let them in and coexist with them. But again, if we were to look, can digestion occur without microbes? If we were to take that thing, and we have our own juices, there are enzymes in food that break it down. They accomplish maybe a third of our digestion, but would we adapt? Could we break down food? Could things break down in nature? Like we might say a carcass would never break down without microbes,
right.
But it would, because it would oxidize.
Right.
And so it would still break down, may not be as fast, they accelerate something, but there could be theoretically a world without microbes, a sterile world. But we see that they have so many roles here for us that even inside of our body, they're affecting our appetite, and on it goes. We would have to, again, start from scratch, and probably that species exists somewhere. I'm thinking with trillions of planets out there. There may be a few sterile planets. And certainly imagine that the gauntlet they have around it, to not let any foreigners in. If we showed up, they would just say, no, you're banned from here, because you guys got germs on you. And we made a great movie, War of the Worlds, and in the end, the microbes killed these guys off because you're not allowed on our planet. They may have been a species that had no microbes at all in their body.
Right.
And it didn't take much for the typical germs that live in us to kick their butt right off the planet. So anyway, but anyway, they might be affecting our weather is the bottom line. And of course, there's nothing we can do about it then, is there? What are we going to do, spray the sky with insecticide and pesticides and kill them all off?
Well, and back to, it kind of takes it back, as I was doing the homework, our planet has more greenery than it did 50 years ago, in my humble opinion, from all the research that I've done, which means we are effectively scrubbing the oxygen or scrubbing the air, absorbing CO2, producing more oxygen. We're in that symbionts with that Mother Nature. I guess we haven't said that word, but I'm going to use it. Mother Nature and we have all together. Could the shit we're spraying on our crops be going up into that atmosphere and affecting the microbe? We have the I'm never going to say
glyphosate.
It right. Glyphosate, and it's screwing up our digestive. How is it not affecting the microbe in the sky? Like, I believe there's always been a microbe in the sky. Like, it's all part of this. You said yin and yang. I'm saying symbiote. It's part of this. And so if it's affecting us, how could it not be affecting that part? That would be my gut.
Which might bring us up to the type of agriculture we've chosen, because we want to debate, should we be vegan and then raw often, or should we be more carnivorous? And therefore, when we have all of those things available, and we can blame, which I understand there's more cows on the planet than there are people, but if we blame animal agriculture and what it does to the atmosphere versus plant-based agriculture, which they're dominantly feeding us grains, which is where all the glyphosate comes from. So all of those can certainly be affecting the weather then, one way or the other, even changing what goes in the oceans. Yep. And ultimately then you'll come to the conclusion that there is no easy yin and yang there. We can't be all carnivorous, we can't be all that, because I can prove both of those will destroy the environment if you want to take it that far, equally on there. I don't know where we go next with that one, except maybe we grow our food in some test tube, make some chemical Soylent Green out of it.
There are folks that have ways that, we go back to, we're going to talk how far we go. Why has Bill Gates bought up all of the farmland? I'll just leave that there. We say we don't have enough place to go grow enough food to support the population, which is why we do the GMO and all this stuff to artificially accelerate, to artificially do things to mass pull stuff out. And I think that we just become a victim of our own arrogance, greed, corruption, whatever the right term is. So
I was looking at the land Bill Gates bought. I was also interested in the land the Chinese bought. We can definitely prove they've been buying land near military bases.
Yep.
Does anybody have a trouble with our government having concerns about that? Well, the current administration on its way out seems to think it's a good idea. We're going to see a new sheriff in town here. We're going to see if we can fix that real quick. And those people are going to be taxed right off the land on there, and that's how they're going to get them out, to say you can't have foreign ownership. We're taking eminent domain on this thing. Yep. Bill Gates has bought a lot of farmland, but compared to how much is still available, he may have just bought enough for him and his, maybe it's just for the clan that they'll take underground when the shit hits the fan.
Yeah, that's the same thing.
There's definitely a lot of land he's bought. I even think about the land that happened in the big Hawaii fires, and that was supposed to drive everybody out. But there's a documentary I saw a glimpse of the trailer on it. It looks like everybody was basically moving back into what was there. So there goes that theory, but I'll have to watch it to see, because if you want to get rid of people and you just flood them off the land, as we're concerned in the Carolinas,
yep,
or burn them off, but then what do you want to do with the land? And so they may say, well, there's a lot of lithium in the land where the Carolinas were flooded. There's a lot of lithium in a lot of places on there, and I just have a feeling that those poor people are going to end up moving back to that same place and get flooded out again in the future, when the common sense would say you shouldn't live there. These things can happen every 100 years or every 1,000 years, but all the rules are different. Now, if we have a seesaw that's going very rapidly, maybe we need to think that this kind of catastrophe can happen every few decades, and you may want to live a little higher up the mountain.
I wanted to wait for you to pause there. I would almost say most logical, but the smartest thought I had was, I was there in the Carolinas. I was in Ground Zero. I spent 4
How
days.
soon after the incident?
I lived through it. Like, it happened. Yeah, my grandson's birthday only happens one day a year, and we went there to go for that birthday. And as we were driving in, it takes us 2 days to get there from here in the Carolinas. We stopped, and she said, "Yeah, the kids aren't going to school tomorrow because there's a rainstorm." That artificial pause was way more. Helene was not a rainstorm; it was a hurricane. And where I'm going with this is, if anybody took notice of where the water went and where the water didn't go, my kids were both luckily in 2 different locations, but they were high water or high land out of water. Those places, hey, build more stuff there, put more infrastructure there, put more support. The places that were underwater, probably not good to rebuild back there. You know, some of this, and I bumped into that, some of this common sense, when common sense stops becoming common, that's where we are in, I think, the world of our.
And that brings me back to that podcast I did where it was climate change and common sense, because a lot of it had to do with that. New Orleans with Hurricane, was it Katrina?
Yeah.
They rebuilt almost everything. How many feet below sea level
They're
is New
below the
Orleans?
water.
And they rebuilt it anyway. One of the biggest conspiracies, I guess, we'll come up with weather is government itself causing this weather. And we know there is this chemtrail stuff. I first became aware of that. I sat through a presentation maybe 40 years ago. And the first machinations of this were out in the northwest, I think, Wyoming, out in that area, Montana. And when they were spraying, there was this pink goo would come down on people's cars, and it was bizarre stuff. They couldn't help but think, where did this come from? And over the years, this became more refined. We've gotten chase planes up there looking at them. We've been able to fly planes behind them and stick scoopers out and measure what's in there. And we have government has a website telling you about what they're doing. They dress it up a little bit, but they still basically tell you we're not doing anything purposeful here. But if there is a long-term goal, because it's certainly been going for 40 years, it has to be a long-term goal. I was told, because I talked to one of the pilots actually involved in the spraying, National Guardsman, and he said that what they were doing was preparing for an EMP pulse that would either come from the sun or from a nuclear attack, high atmosphere, and to lay down an electronic cloud blanket above key cities that would reflect the EMP. And so these aluminum particles, barium particles, were part of this strategy. And they would practice creating X's and grid patterns so that they could get, with barely an hour's notice, planes scrambled, know exactly what altitude to fly, what pattern to fly, what spray mixtures to use to get the best dispersal to lay that blanket down in the atmosphere
40 years
over
ago.
These things. That was where they were beginning to put this mindset together.
Yeah.
The thing is, though, they've had enough practice, and yet I still see these grids being laid up there. I could go out any weekend and take pictures of them, even over to Metroplex here. The patterns are there. It's real. And I treat a lot of pilots. My father was a pilot, as not a commercial pilot, but one step below that, he was a CPA. So I spent a lot of time in planes, and so much so that we would land a small 6-seater plane at Philadelphia International Airport between the jets because of his connections to go and land at a place like that, had that kind of clout. And what these pilots are part of is a massive network. There's not just, sometimes you're recruiting commercial planes and putting it into their fuel, but most of the time you've got a fleet around the world doing this thing.
Right.
And so if there's a strategy, it seems so noble. But then it got darker recently when it says, yeah, that was just a cover story. What we're trying to do is cool the planet because it's warming and we want to save everybody's butt. And by laying more and more particulates in the air, we don't have enough regular pollution up there from the jets. We don't have enough red volcanic ash up there. There's plenty of that. We need even more to cool the planet down. First thing is, that would be a really interesting assumption that you could actually tell me, because of the little data, but it's a few hundred years, that we really were warming and you had to do this type of thing. Right. Especially since we never left our last ice age. We have ice on Greenland, we have ice on Antarctica, lots of it. Yep. We're still in an ice age, people. We haven't left. Yep. And to think that we were going to possibly melt all of that and lose some cities with the other beneficial effects, that was not desirable. That's irrational. And on the other hand, if the planet wasn't doing anything, but they wanted to make it cooler, which is not conducive to humanity doing well.
Right.
We can't produce enough food when it gets colder.
Right.
We will not do so well in any ways. And if they wanted to cool it down, is it to reduce the population of the Earth or make it more terraform for some other species to come here that enjoys a colder planet? Have you any thoughts on the chemtrails, since you've been aware of them, that I've blown away any of your conceptions or given you new ideas on that?
I think I've heard most or have understood most of what you've described. You know, you can go back and there's a George Clooney movie where he did it and he's talking about CIA and cloud bursting and things like that. I've got family relations that believe and completely have described how and have shown in some sort of examples how, you know, was it cloud bursting and some of the things you can do to load up. And even a buddy that talked about Dubai doing it so much that they ended up flooding the city because they created so much water over.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Yeah. And they blamed the cloud spraying for that.
Yeah. So when you look at that, you know, one of the first questions that was asked by somebody as I was talking through and you prepared for this is, if the government can do that, why is there ever a drought? And it's like, oh, good question, right? So it comes back to arrogance, corruption. Is there some other thing? So I believe, to round out what you asked, I believe that there is not only the congestion and sickness of the microbes that we've described, but there is also an artificial hand of God that our governments are attempting to manipulate the weather. And, you know, to the point where it just blows me away that you can go and, I'm going to say 90% accuracy, they can give you the weather for 2 weeks. How the F do you know what the weather's going to be like? Mm-hmm. It's the 8th? Yeah. How do you know what the weather's going to be like on December 21st? But yet, about 90% of the time,
yeah, we're getting there.
We're getting there. Like, how?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, I just had a deep thought. Because when I say how much I don't like microbes, but we got to get along with them, I'm kind of envious of them sometimes. If I had to reincarnate into this planet, I'd want to be a microbe. Be part of a colony, the collective. All you get to do is eat and reproduce all day long, not have anything to worry about. What a simple life it would be, the pleasures of life. Reproduction, food, consumption, etc. It's not a bad life to be a microbe, so maybe I can't get so mad at them after all when they want to just hang out and do stuff. It's just business. They just want to live in my intestines the other day. They didn't really want to make me sick, but my body said, no, you can't stay here. All right, we're going to get into some quantum physics here in a moment. All right, I'm going to read a quote I wrote about quantum principles here, and I want to get the words right, so we'll put this out here to Rob, and then we'll go from there with our discussion. When we say that life is not fair and it's not balanced at all, we teach our kids that life's not fair. But neither is quantum principles when you balance it with relativity. If you think about the rules of Einstein and space, we developed a system of physics called relativity. And then when you get to a black hole, you have a margin there called the event horizon. And as soon as you go over that, new rules of physics take place, quantum physics. And the bridging of that has actually only been found to be through the mind. And we have no other way of building a mathematical bridge yet that has been successful. Now, ultimately, life is quantum existing in relativity. So if we use that black hole thing, the real source of us, of mind, soul, is inside the quantum, and it's existing out here in relativity, this world of time and space, so to speak. But ultimately, we use a term, this is a matrix, therefore. It's a creation of something that we don't understand. And if life is a matrix, is it possible the code has been hacked from the original intention for us having a blissful existence to now what we experience? Therefore, if there's a hack to this, malice, or maybe it's just a glitch in the matrix, so to speak, So now, if weather was supposed to be much more stable, and now it's shooting all over the place, is the quantum world breaking down, perhaps? Is our existence, is this thing that is now bad weather, which is threatening our existence? We actually feel, gosh, we're more and more mortal here. We may not survive these changes if it gets much worse. If this whole relativity is breaking down, just forget our planet, but what if the whole thing is part of, now people get real positive about this, it's going to be the ascension, all of us will move to a higher plane of existence, and when we've achieved our purpose, our understanding of life, and then we'll move out of this miserable relativity physical world here. Do you think we live in a matrix, or do you think it's something bigger than that?
Yes, I think we live in the matrix. I think that there is some form of control. I'm going to step out of the camera for a second. This is being carried by every person on the planet. It's a digital leash. I have knowingly worn a Fitbit now in a couple of months for 10 years, allowing somebody to go and digital breadcrumb me everywhere we go. I'm not fighting it. I'm sort of accepting it, and I'm trying to be the beacon of positivity as this thing is going on. Not to go way off on a tangent that you probably weren't looking for, but I'm looking at. I don't know. Way off. Is this weather a way to force humans to spend more time indoors, which makes them plugged into the matrix more? Is that happening? I don't know. That's one of those. I love Einstein because Einstein was a scientist that never spent any time in the lab. He hated Bunsen burners. He was scared of the lab. All of Einstein's value came from thought experiments, working on it in his brain, thinking it through. How does this work? I think this is going to happen. Then he had to wait for that black hole to happen, not black hole, that eclipse to happen that somebody was able to see and bend in the lights and all that. So I love the guy. And then I get way off topic and forget where I was going. I think we're locked in. I think a lot of it is to control us. I'm bringing all this up that I'm one of those persons that's trying to lead with love. That's my handle in the Web3 world, if we're going to go underground. And I chose that because I believe most social media, most news, most anything that's used to control behavior, existence, and where we're going is fear-driven. It's a fear-driven, clickbait. It's, our clickbait, billion-dollar storms, right? And okay, did we have to address this in a month where it's going to become trillion-dollar storms because we've now eclipsed this another thing, and now we've got an even bigger word to bring us in. So, long way of saying, I believe in the matrix. I believe that there's some imbalance that happens from time to time, and I do think that they work in their mysterious ways, that things like AI has all of a sudden become the latest craze. I work for a software company where we've been using AI for 22 years. But now it's popular and crazy, and NVIDIA is worth $3 trillion, and it's this latest thing. But we've been doing this the whole time. Back to your 30 years. And for me, I actually go farther into what is actually happening that I don't even know what's going on. If my father was tube theory, I transistor theory. Now it's these circuit things that are printed, whatever. But is it other stuff that we don't even know? I don't know. I'll leave you with that.
Well, I like that idea that if the matrix if the program that is controlling us dominantly gets its best control from fear, and in order to keep us connected to the matrix, we do go inside. We get away from the biggest threat because that is a shelter for you. When people had more faith in God, they were not afraid to be outside. They felt connected to the heavens. They looked up to the sky and were afraid of it, so to speak, like that.
Let me pause you there. I don't even know if they were just afraid of it or if they were in awe. And the awe caused them to feel small. And that caused them to feel gratitude. And that caused them to be an appreciative, expected to be taken care of society that you can't kind of allude to back with the government's going to protect us. And I think we've slid away.
When we think of the paradigm shifts from the earth is not flat but it's round and the earth is not the center of the universe, and then you are not alone, and we're in that transition right now. But as each of these, and there'll be another paradigm shift, but each one of these makes you feel smaller because you're more and more insignificant. But it seems like they've been controlling us from getting up here because we can't handle being that insignificant.
But it's the best part about me going to St. Bart's is I can be on an island. There's not that dwarf of light pollution, and I can see the heavens, and I can be there. That's what I'm saying.
But you're saying being more insignificant makes you closer to God, and I would agree. So if they don't want you to go there, it's because that you feel less and less significant takes away maybe some of their control then. And
that's what I believe.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if there's a glitch in the matrix, either it's falling apart, which we would be very concerned about because the Matrix movie had us into a lot of who built this thing then. And when you get to finally meet it, it's almost like the Wizard of Oz thing revealing the curtain.
Right.
It's like, this isn't much, it's just one little guy with a beard again,
right.
Ultimately. And where does this guy come from? So if we do have a glitch in the matrix and weather is things getting weird because the computer program's falling apart, maybe we should be very, very worried. But you and I will then say, well, what's the big deal? We just upload, we're just avatars. The program collapses and we all come out of it like Dorothy waking up in the Wizard of Oz moment and telling her relatives, you were so-and-so here. Okay? If the planet is alive, Mother Earth, Gaia, and we've talked about the sort of that so far when we talk about the microbes being part of the planet and maybe even psychological programs. But let's say that the Earth is a consciousness and we can look at the things that are on here that annoy me so much, nature, as almost the immune system of the planet, kind of keeping us in our boundaries.
Right.
And controlling our numbers and tolerating us just like we tolerate the microbes that live in us. We give them certain boundaries and we say, you give us something back, and we're on here. But on the other hand, if nature, Mother Earth, has decided that I don't want these humans here, and it starts making us miserable. I almost thought of a cat playing with its captured prey before it finally kills it, and it's torturing us a little bit, but it's just having some fun. I don't want to think of Mother Earth as being vindictive or petty, but
I think those are human traits, and I don't think that there's a vindictive part. I think there is it's like the Venus flytrap. There is a process, trying to make sure I use the right word, and there's a trigger, and it's almost mechanical, and it happens. And I think Mother Earth, Gaia, she's responding, but this is histamine, that kind of effect, where we're being almost forewarned, and it's not like, hey, the beatings will continue till morale improves. It's more, start being better and things will get better. Like, I think it's linear that way. I don't think that there's, vindictive. That's a human trait. You don't see that a lot in, well, maybe I was going to say in cows, but you probably do see it in cows, but you don't see it in nature, I don't think.
But we used to think that way. When you think about a volcano going off, we've angered the gods, and some bad event happened, they always thought something was getting vengeful and they blamed the gods, but it was through Earth that some other form of consciousness would come and give you a whooping and make you behave better.
Yep.
So maybe we animated the Earth as a tool of our creator or creators up in there.
I don't think there's anything vindictive about it. Like, that's what I'm saying. I don't think that there's malice from Mother Earth. I don't think there's an intent. I don't think that part is there. I believe in consciousness and that there's a connection, but it's, if there's multiple different channels, it's only speaking on one channel, right?
So it's more of a reflex. So is there, if there's no intention at all, like I'm trying to help you become better, does it not work that way? If it's not punishing us, but is it trying to help us in any way, or not even that much of an intelligence there? Then if we don't put those traits in, or maybe there is no Mother Earth at all, and it's a metaphor. We see things and we can say hey, the oceans are like sweat and the rain is like tears. We can come up with all those things, but maybe that's all it is. Is there really a Mother Earth that is a true living consciousness? After all, microbes become conscious in a colony, but why can't dirt and water become something like that?
Have you had any of those experiences where you go down and you do the get with the earth and you partake in psilocybin or something of that nature, where you're actually connecting to the earth? Have you experienced any of that before?
Well, we did a show with a shaman,
Okay.
and we talked about some of those, and we're contemplating, wife and I, going off and doing that level of experience, because I think you're right. The earth becomes alive when you're doing that kind of experience. You see the tree moving and reaching out to you, and you put your hand into the earth and pull back out again, and it's all part of some wonderful collective energy illusion, so to speak. So maybe the earth is alive because it really is not separate from us. It's still connected and part of the whole collective consciousness of what creation is then, right? So it's alive that way.
Feel it is alive and that we are connected. That's Rob's view, Gramps' view of this, is that we are all connected. I'm just saying, I'm taking it to the point of a human trait is, call it greed. A human trait is vindictiveness. I'm going to get you back, that kind of thing. I don't feel that Mother Nature has those behaviors, but at the same time, I think that the terms I would use in humans that does is it sets up boundaries. Like it sets up these are the ways and the places, the way that I think that you could live in harmony. And if you get outside these boundaries, that's when I think you see more of a reaction than hey, I'm trying to scold you for being a bad person. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but that's kind of more of my thought.
Right. Do you feel do you have a gut feeling that the Earth is moving towards a colder cycle on its own, or a warming cycle, or do you think we still got a long way to go before it shifts that visibly drastically to a label that says this is an ice age, or this is there's a fancy word they use when all the ice is melting up when the dinosaurs were here. I forgot the name of that term.
I would tend to say, based on the data points that I've looked at, in obviously, even 100 years is a small scale to look at, but I believe that we have had a slight warming, and I think we're in a slight warming cycle. I don't think we're getting closer to an ice age. I think that's farther out there. I think we're still kind of warming. But I'm not 100% sure. Like I said, I think that there's just natural deviations, and they talk about comets and things that have hit us and have affected the Earth, and how long it takes. And I'm going to say this, it's slightly joke. We're both men. You know how long it takes Uranus to circle the sun? It's a long time. Like, it's a really long time. So are there asteroid belts or comets or other things that they've been gone 100,000 years and they're getting ready to come back, and we're going to be tissue paper? That's the you know what I mean? That's what I mean. So I don't live in fear. I live in gratitude, and hey, every day is a blessing, and it's a gift, and I could be fucking killed walking across the street tomorrow by a bus. So I don't know if that helps Mother Nature's conversation, but that's where my head's at.
Well, I think that's where most people are, is that we say, hey, it's summer, it gets hot. It's winter, it gets cold, and that's about it. We expect these extremes, and some winters are much worse than others. But I think most humans live that way. We don't really have a feeling that we can think. I don't think we're connected enough to something that may happen over tens of thousands of years to say, shit's coming. We got to get ready for it. But we see things around us that they're using this weather to create this control, create this fear. They've chosen something because it's always a war on something, the war on communism, the war on terror, the war on the microbes, it was the pandemic, and then we may have a war on aliens coming to us that may be real or not. But then there's a war on climate change, and we're in charge of this thing. It's a control thing. So I think they just have to keep finding a new narrative to keep us fearful, keep us in control.
I wanted to share this with you. Interesting, but he said 1960s, oil will run out in 10 years. 1970s, a new ice age is coming in 10 years. 1980s, acid rain will destroy all crops in 10 years. 1990s, the ozone layer will disappear in 10 years. 2000s, the Arctic ice caps will be gone in 10 years. 2010s, global warming will cause irreversible damage in 10 years. None of it happened, but every single prediction led to one thing: more taxes. I thought that was kind of an interesting one. I'm more, I guess, not desiring to be naive, but I'm more on the I don't want to believe humanity could be such that we have a technology that could relieve drought and we have drought. That is the good guy on one shoulder, the bad guy on the other shoulder. That's one of those arguments and conversations where I just don't understand it. It doesn't make, at my core as a human, I don't get that level of, I'm going to say greed. I just don't get it.
Mankind has tried to influence the weather, I guess, as far back as we've been in tribes. The rain dance.
Yeah.
Praying for rain. There was a parade today for Allen. It's a big parade, but it was raining this morning. So how many people said, please stop raining,
Yeah.
And the power of the mind. We know there's minor weather modifications for sure. I know the ski valleys of Vail and Aspen cloud seed all the time to control the moisture in the valley. That's why there's never been a forest fire in there, and it keeps the ski season. So we have weather control on small local scales. We understand why we need to try and have some connectivity to it, influence of it.
Right.
So what we're talking about here is really something on a global scale that starts to become much more greed-oriented, therefore, or much more scary to think that this weather is an indication of something bad to come, and maybe we'd have every right to start to think in preparation of it, much like you shingled up your building in St. Bart's. Should we start fortifying, storing up some stuff, and how bad is it going to get? It's hard for us to want to go there because it's fatalistic thinking. I want people to be a warrior that says tomorrow's going to be a better day, or I want more of the good thing today tomorrow, and I can anticipate and look forward. I want numerous things down the road. I want you to even anticipate your death and the white light, not getting through today only, and hope you'll have enough energy and strength to get through the next day. That is the flight mentality. So if we start acknowledging that something bad is going to happen, it's defeating all of that. So you want to be a realist, but there's a certain part of you that says, I'm just going to ignore this. It's a better strategy because maybe it's going to be so big there's nothing I can do about it anyway. And
that's the side of it, right? If not being ignorant, but there is a point at which it's like, if it's so big that you can't have an effect on it anyways, what is worrying about it doing other than destroying your microbiome and stress? One of the things I would say, stress is the worst on microbes. If we could just stress some of these guys, maybe they would die. But yeah, my biggest effects in my health come from huge swings in stress.
All right.
Yep.
Well, I have a last thought for people to take away from today's show. I want you to love life, love yourself, love another as if you've never been hurt before. And with that, good day, America.